Apostleship Jesus 22. Is the sin of pride more serious than sexual sin? Is the sin of pride worse than the sin of lust? This question is a major debate that kept busy the fathers of the church and great teachers of the church. Two schools of thought came out of these debates. First, some say lust is worth. According how easily people are tempted and in regard of the hudge misery it brings in people's lives. For example, abortions, adultery, separated couples, murder driven by jealousy, etc. Their conclusion is, lust is the sin which leads in hell the greatest number of people. On the other hand, some say, the worst sin is pride. How to decide? I believe there are two ways to look at it, Jesus's way, and men's way. If we look at how Jesus behaves in front of sinners, it is very clear that the worst sin is pride. When confronted with the highest ranked in society, the Pharisee and Sadducee Jews, the ones who established the law, Jesus gets terribly mad, so does John the Baptist by the way. He threatens them with the fire of hell they won't be able to escape. Most of us know the Beatitudes, but most of the time, we ignore the 8 curses, Matthew 23:29. Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites! For you build the tombs of the prophets, thus you witness against yourselves that you are sons of those who murdered the prophets, within you are full of dead people's bones and all uncleanness. This message is powerful and harsh. It is quite well said indeed. On the other hand, when Jesus encounters the adulterous woman, he hardens not his heart. Well, he speaks truth. He does not comfort her saying she is good, she's a poor sinner, that he is with her, not condemning her. He says to her, go and from now on sin no more. It's not at all the same way he spoke to the Pharisees and the scribes. It means that the sins of weakness are often sex-related and are often related to the need for money. Jesus looks at those sinners with mercy. But when he encounters pride, when a man is sure to be rightful, deserving salvation because he is worthy, in that case Jesus becomes extremely angry. Visibly in the sight of Jesus, the sin of pride leads to hell, whereas the sin of weakness lead into terrible earthly consequences, and so on, to many miseries. And sometimes, to much repentance. As well, he will say it for the adulterous woman who pours the perfume on his feet. To a man who despises this gesture he will answer, Luke 7:47, therefore I tell you, her sins, which are many, are forgiven for she loved much. Actually, yes, she sinned much. It is because she has sinned much and she has regretted much, she then has been forgiven much. In truth, he who is forgiven little loves little. On the contrary, he who is forgiven much, loves much. Then how can lust, adultery and all sins affiliated, be the worst sins? For the consequences it brings in life. Because this kind of sin destroys families. Because the divorce comes mostly from the fact that we look elsewhere, and because it is also the cause for abortions, since undesired pregnancies come from adultery quite often. However, I never said this mortal sin of weakness is not to be considered seriously. It is indeed very serious for its terrible consequences on earth. But it produces so much misery in the end that the man becomes poor like the prodigal son. He eats the pig's food and eventually touches the bottom of his misery in his heart. As for pride, on the contrary, one can be very chaste, never commit adultery, and have a soul disposed to follow Lucifer in his revolt when he appears to him at the hour of his death.